Well, we are at war to protect our Constitution from Donald Trump. And now he's creating fake press conferences with scripted responses by the president of El Salvador, who now seems to be directing traffic on how we conduct our constitutional republic. We're taking instructions from the petty dictator of El Salvador on how to run our due process and our Fifth Amendment rights for people who have now been ordered by 13 separate judges, including 9 justices, all of them of the United States Supreme Court, ordering the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Armando Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully sent by the U.S. government to El Salvador. And we're going to let the petty tyrant of El Salvador tell us how to run our democracy? Not on my watch. We got a new filing by the Trump administration in breaking news, and they are breaking all the rules in this breaking news. We've got the 3rd declaration filed by the Trump administration just late on Monday night, and it relitigates issues already settled by the United States Supreme Court and refuses, openly defies the Supreme Court's ruling and command that the Trump administration tell Judge Xinis in Maryland what they've done to facilitate his release and what they're going to do. Instead, Donald Trump has this Joseph Mazzara, some acting lawyer, general counsel for Homeland Security, obviously taking his direction from Stephen Miller in Donald Trump's inner sanctum. They have him file to relitigate the case, try to inject false facts into the record to try to take it back up on appeal and tell the judge to go F herself. They're not going to tell her what they're doing because they're not doing anything. In fact, they point to a clip from an interview today that was set up and staged by the Trump administration as justification as to why they're not going to bring him home at all. I'm Michael Popok. We demand that Abrego Garcia be brought home, that he be brought home now, that he don't rot another day in jail. But it's probably going to take an order of contempt tomorrow or on Monday at a hearing by Judge Xinis, and I'm here for it. And so are you on Legal AF. Let's get into it. Last Thursday, the Supreme Court ruled against Donald Trump, joining a total of 4 other judges who told him that he had violated the constitutional rights and an order of a federal judge, an immigration judge, concerning Armando Abrego Garcia, who had a green card and who, in addition to that, had an order to prevent his removal to El Salvador under penalty of certain death. They disregarded that. They hustled him onto a plane. They arrested him in front of his daughter, and they sent him off there. They sent him off to a prison that they contracted with. This is not foreign affairs. Trump's not negotiating a foreign treaty with El Salvador, the petty dictator of El Salvador, the murder capital of the world. He entered a commercial transaction under a contracted agreement and transmitted $6 million of our taxpayer dollars to pay to house prisoners who should be in the United States. And so for him to claim, well, we can't get him back, it's a sovereign decision by President Bukele is a load of crap. And so what's happened is that the Trump administration has been filing, as required by the judge, these kind of argumentative pieces of paper where they try to inject facts that aren't true, try to rewrite and revise and relitigate what the Supreme Court's ruling is, try to turn it on its head. And now we got the latest example. We've had 3 separate declarations filed, and 3 separate people have said almost the same thing. We're not going to tell you anything other than he's alive. We're not going to take any steps to facilitate. The only thing we have to facilitate is on domestic facilitation, meaning we'll let him back in if he ever shows up, but we're not going to do anything to make him show up. That's not what the Supreme Court ruled. That's not what Judge Xinis ruled at all. In fact, they are commanded, the executive branch, to tell us exactly what steps have been taken, and they refuse to do it. I'm going to read to you from the latest example from this tool, Joseph Mazzara, in a minute. Just on Sunday, they filed 2 pieces of paper, another one of these from somebody else declarations who said the same thing, because they're trying to fix a problem. And the problem they're trying to fix and wallpaper over is, One of their prior lawyers admitted as an officer of the court that Abrego Garcia was illegally deported to El Salvador. It's in the Supreme Court ruling. It's a fact that 13 judges have relied on. They don't like that fact. They fired that lawyer, and they keep having other people violate their oaths if they are their oaths to uphold the Constitution, and if they're lawyers like Mazzara, their oath to duty of candor to the tribunal. And instead, they're filing these little mini briefs to argue, telling her that we're not going to tell you anything other than where he is. And everything else is covered by foreign affairs. We're negotiating foreign affairs. It's a delicate situation, and we're not going to tell you. I mean, in their filing on Sunday, they went so far in opposing the motion for contempt that had been filed already to argue that there's a meeting on Monday, but it's a very delicate situation, Judge. You should not interfere in it. Delicate situation. This was a scripted event, a pitch and catch, a call and response between Donald Trump and Nayib Bukele, the petty dictator of El Salvador. So petty that he couldn't even find a shirt and tie to wear. When Zelensky was being dumped on and insulted to his face in front of the cameras a few weeks ago with the vice president and the president, they mocked him he's a wartime president. He's a president at war, for wearing his fatigue shirt instead of a shirt and tie. Look at Bukele in the next clip I'm going to show you. And it's this clip, this very video clip, that ends up being referenced by Mazzara for the Department of Homeland Security as a justification as to why they can't get him out. You see the biofeedback loop that's been created here? All this echo chamber created by Donald Trump. They say it's all within the sovereign power of Bukele. They have no control over Bukele. Then they say it's a sensitive situation. We're negotiating it, but we can't tell you what it is, Judge. Then they have the meeting, and then they script the meeting, or Stephen Miller scripts the meeting, and then Bukele, like a good boy, he says exactly what the Trump administration wants him to say. I think they gave him a dog biscuit afterwards because he's so obedient. And then they use that particular clip to then cycle it back and put it back in front of the judge. Let's watch the clip.
How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into it.
There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
Did that look like a delicate dance of diplomacy? Or did that look like somebody who has been told exactly what to say and with gusto decided to say it while a man's life hangs in the balance? This is not only about Abrego Garcia. This is about the nation that we are. Who are we as an American people? Who are we under our diplomacy? What does our flag stand for? What does our constitutional republic stand for? And are we going to let, and the answer to this for Donald Trump is yes, a petty dictator tell us how to run our constitutional republic? May I remind Donald Trump, as much as it pains me, you are the leader of the free world. You are supposed to be the shining beacon of democracy. You are supposed to be standing on the shoulder of the other 46 presidents, or 45, we deduct one for you. You are not supposed to be listening to the petty dictator of a country that's the murder capital of the world with 25% poverty rate. That's barely a democracy. It's not even a democracy, to tell us how to handle our due process, our constitutional rights, or our prisoners. So now let's turn to Joe Mazzara. I want to put up on the screen his official 001 portrait. I think that tells you all you need to know about what I'm going to read to you from Joe Mazzara. Now, he is the third in a line, in a line of three of different, what we call declarants. These are people that are filing under oath as required by the judge, but they're not filing anything under oath because they're not telling her anything that the Supreme Court told her that she's entitled to understand in order to administer justice. Here's what he says. I'm the acting general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah, we know the real general counsel of Homeland Security, Stephen Miller. Then he starts litigating instead of answering the questions as a fact witness. Now he's a litigant. Now he's an advocate. I'm aware of this lawsuit, he says in paragraph 3. On March 15, 2025, Abrego Garcia, a native and citizen of El Salvador, but he's a green card holder here, by the way, was removed to El Salvador. Yeah, we know that. We also know it was illegal. And if you didn't know that, Joe, you should have just looked it up in the Supreme Court ruling. Number 5, during bond hearings in 2019, oh, here we go. Now we're injecting into the record information that's not present based on his review of what? His review, he wasn't there in 2019. He doesn't say, I handled the bond hearing. I was a participant in the bond hearing. He just says, I'm the acting general counsel. There was a bond hearing. Based on what? Your review of what file in evidence? None. And then they say, well, during it, they proved he was MS-13, but then the Board of Immigration Appeals upheld the finding, but then there was an order against his removal. Right, and that's what the Trump administration violated when they loaded him onto that plane. And then he says on paragraph 6, Abrego Garcia was ordered removed by an immigration judge. He was also granted withholding of removal by an immigration judge. Well, thanks for putting it in C-spot run format. Abrego Garcia is no longer eligible for withholding of removal. Who says who? Says the Trump administration? We're back to the circular reasoning of the Trump administration. They create their own facts that they refer to in their own filing. Then they talk about DHS, Department of Homeland Security, he says, has an established process for taking steps to remove domestic obstacles. Where does it say that the facilitate that's required, that all steps to facilitate his return as ordered by the Supreme Court need to be taken and told to the judge, Judge Xinis? Where does that say domestic obstacles? See, now they create this straw man that's inconsistent with the actual language of the Supreme Court and of our constitutional principles. And they say, well, if he ever shows up, we'll let him in. But we have no ability to bring him here. And then we get to that this new talking point that got created after Donald Trump said out loud, getting on Air Force One, well, I'm not really familiar with the decision of the Supreme Court, but if they rule to bring him back, we'll bring him back. And now it's a sovereign nation, El Salvador. I can't tell them to bring him back. You can't make me. Why not? Why can't we make you? Why can't we make you take steps to facilitate his return? Make the phone call. We're not asking you to conduct foreign policy. We're asking you to talk to the counterparty that you negotiated a deal with under a contract to take our removed people and get inmate number whatever back. That's not the conduct of foreign affairs the way our founding fathers would have described it. Then here comes the pitch and the catch. I am aware that the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, was in Washington today to meet with Donald Trump. President Trump and President Bukele held a bilateral summit this morning. Really, it just looked like a phony press conference in which Donald Trump used the opportunity to bash the CNN White House correspondent. That's what I thought that was. But you want to call it one person's made up bash festival is another person's bilateral summit, I guess. He then says, I understand. You understand from what? From your review? You looked at the video? You watch YouTube? What? I understand that in response to a question regarding Abrego Garcia, President Bukele said, and I quote, I hope you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the U.S. How can I smuggle a terrorist in the U.S.? Of course, I'm not going to do that. The question is preposterous. And then he cites to the YouTube of the clip I just showed you. And of course, there's no mention at all about the steps they're taking, because they're not taking any steps, because they're telling the Supreme Court to go pound sand. Now, how do we get here? Quickly, Axios did a very good timeline. I just want to remind everybody. Now, I've done videos, I think, about every one of these things, but let's start with the beginning. It's only been a month. March 12th, Abrego Garcia is stopped by immigration agents in front of his 5-year-old, who wrongfully tell him that his removal status has changed, and they put him through Texas on a plane to El Salvador. On March 15th, they had a filing in court with a now fired or permanently retired Department of Justice attorney. They tell Judge Xinis in Maryland that on March 15th, although ICE was aware of his protection from removal to El Salvador, he was removed to El Salvador in an administrative error. Or as one judge on the Fourth Circuit said, it was a screw-up. Yeah, it was a constitutional screw-up. We'll agree to agree on that, okay? On the 31st, 16 days later, they did it again. The Department of Justice admitted in court papers filed with Judge Xinis that the person was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. This drove the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, mad. They fired the guy, they brought in somebody else, and now you see all the filings that they're filing in which they say, we didn't make a mistake. I mean, MS-13 is a terrorist organization. We're at war with them. So we're going to remove him. That's not what it says in the Supreme Court ruling. On April 4th, Xinis ordered that Abrego Garcia get returned by the 17th, by midnight on April 7th. But the Supreme Court stepped in, and the Chief Justice entered a stay on the 7th of April to give them time to rule. 3 days later, on April 10th, the Supreme Court ruled last Thursday and said in an unsigned order that Judge Xinis was right. The Trump administration was commanded to take steps to facilitate his release from El Salvador. On the 11th, the next day, the federal judge demanded that the government provide daily updates when she felt like she was getting screwed around with. And then ever since, we've gotten these ridiculous updates from either people who filed in the wrong court, didn't know what court they were in, or people who don't have actual knowledge, or people who aren't going to tell the judge anything that's required, which is culminating now on a hearing today on Tuesday, which I'm going to cover the results of, in which we're going to be talking about contempt and a lot of different things. I keep checking the docket to see if in advance Judge Xinis is going to do anything about it. I think she was waiting for the press conference, the Phony press conference to happen. And now that it's been cited in the new filing by Mr. Mazzara, it's opened the door for the judge to inquire. There's a lot of different things this judge could do. Contempt. I'm not sure this guy gets out if there's not a finding of contempt against the Department of Justice and against the Trump administration, and somebody's threatened to be put in jail. I really don't. I don't think at this rate they're not going to do it unless the federal court uses everything at their power. And there's many other things the federal court can do, and I'll cover it after I hear what happens at the hearing on Tuesday. I mean, there's payments that are going to El Salvador. The judge can get to the bottom of that, can appoint a receiver, somebody official that works as a court officer who evaluates the data and the financing and makes recommendations to the judge about how, through the contract, to get the guy back, since the Trump administration isn't being honest with her. She may need an officer of the court that works for her to evaluate all this information and serve as a referee or a special master. Interesting. I'll cover it here on Legal AF. I'm glad you're here. We're building this channel with our bare hands together. We're going to hit over 550,000 before the week is over, and that's all a testament to you and what you've built. I'm doing my part, curating everything here on Legal AF. Follow me, Michael Popok, Legal AF Hot Takes on the Midas Touch Network, about 14 or 15 a week. And then I do about 30 videos a week right here on this particular YouTube channel, Legal AF, along with a dozen other contributors. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.